Hey everyone, welcome to Joleedo Thrones, the premier Game of Thrones podcast on the Joleedo Podcast Network, where we cover topics ranging from progressive politics to superheroes. If you like the show, please follow us on Twitter at Joleedo, on Tumblr at joleedo.tumblr.com, or like us on Facebook. If you're listening on iTunes, Spreaker, SoundCloud, or any of the other great podcast apps, we'd love for you to subscribe and recommend the show. Your support keeps us alive. I'm your host, Alex Lee, and here with me today is Jason Johnson. How you doing, Jason?
Pretty good, Alex.
So, Game of Thrones, Season 6, Episode 2, what'd you think?
The big one. It was the big one. After last week, which I honestly thought was pretty disappointing.
Well, I thought that last episode was pretty good. I mean, not quite as good as the end of Season 5, but a significantly stronger start to the season than the previous season.
Yeah, it's not that I didn't like it. It's just I'm sick of character. Oh, I am sick of Dany being left out in the desert for a season. You know what I mean? Like, how many years do I have to watch her wander through another desert before she does what she's supposed to do? And I understand that her eventually getting, to Westeros and, the battle for the Iron Throne, or however that's going to play out with her. I understand they want to keep that. They want to keep that one for the big finale. That's the last season. I get that, but
that makes sense. But I would say that you could point to tonight's episode as being a big episode, but we don't even see Dany at all.
No, that's true. We didn't see the Sand Sisters either.
Yeah,
one of these is not like the other. I actually like Dany. Little on the fence about the Sand Sisters, but actually that entire Dorne arc. But that has nothing to do with tonight's episode.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all across the map here. We start off not even in the same time period as the last episode.
So what did you think about that? About incorporating flashbacks in that way? Because last season, in episode 1 of season 5, we get a Cersei flashback.
Yep.
Where she encounters the witch or whoever that is. And we get the details of this curse that, she'll have 3 children, they're going to die.
So I heard someone at the Game of Thrones premiere viewing party I went to that their hot take was that witch who gave that premonition to Cersei is in fact Melisandre. And I don't buy that, but that would be interesting. Maybe that's what maybe the TV show goes somewhere different with it.
Yeah, it could be. It's an interesting idea, but nothing. I mean, we haven't seen anything else to support that.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's interesting. So compared to how they told that flashback last season, where it's a cold open, like we're in the past, versus having Bran like being an observer.
Yeah, I think the perspective of Bran being the observer really adds more to it, and it's not just kind of it doesn't really have a lot of basis. I think it really invests the viewer and the audience more in the scene, and yeah, I really liked it.
I do too, and it makes me very anxious for what's the next one. What's the next one we're going to see?
Yeah, I mean,
what other events are we going to go back and see? Like the Kingslayer in action? Are we going to see the Mad King die? Are we going to see like the end of Robert's rebellion?
Are we going to see the Tower?
Oh, I think now it's more obvious than ever. That's happening. And I think bringing Lyanna back into the show, who she's been referenced several times, in the pilot of the series, she was referenced. And then Littlefinger and Sansa talk briefly about her in season 5. But now we get to see her. We get to see, who Rhaegar Targaryen was fighting for, in a way.
Yep. Who he was willing to throw it all away for.
That kind of leads me in a roundabout way to something else important that happened, and that was the return of the Greyjoys.
Yeah.
And the death of Balon Greyjoy.
A scene that's described in just kind of described off scene in the books, if I recall correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And then here, it's right in your face, very intense, very stormy. I enjoyed it. I like the return of the Greyjoys. I'm excited to see more. What did you think?
I do too. I didn't realize that I missed them.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But one thing that really stuck in my mind is that if you think back to, I believe it was season 2, when Melisandre takes Gendry's blood, and she and Stannis curse the 3 usurpers to the throne: Joffrey, Robb, and Baelon.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw Robb die at the end of season 3, and then episode 2 of season 4, Joffrey gets it.
Yeah.
And I've been kind of waiting, since we haven't been with the Greyjoys for a while. I've been waiting to see, the death of Baelon, because in a way, that is, for lack of a better term, like the fulfilled promise of the Lord of Light. It was like the last part of that curse, the last big spell of Melisandre's and Stannis' that had to be fulfilled in order to get to the end of this episode.
That makes sense.
If that makes sense. Like there are some things that need to happen first.
Okay.
Before anyone can be brought back to life.
Have to finish their other spells first. Now, what's the name of that particular Greyjoy? I believe I recall his title, but do you know it?
Is it Aaron? Is it Euron? However you pronounce that.
EU.
Is that who that is?
Is it like the gray eye or he's got?
I don't know. I don't remember.
We got a brief taste of the other uncle, the priest.
Yeah.
And I didn't really care for that because I was. So it was interesting to me that the King's Moot was law, not a long lost tradition.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so as though they had always been done that. And if I recall correctly, the Greyjoys had essentially taken power by force, and that had been the law of the land for the rememberable past.
Right.
And so, yeah, interesting change. I mean, I'm pro King's Moots. They seem like they're a good time.
Yeah, that should be interesting, especially with a character like Yara, who her name was Asha.
Yeah,
Asha in the books. Do you know why they changed that?
I have no idea. Yeah, I in my notes written down here, I have Asha.
When you read Asha, you don't get it confused with another character's name, Osha, the wildling.
Oh.
But when it's spoken aloud, it seems, or at least the idea was that it might be too confusing to audiences who aren't familiar with the novels to hear Osha and Asha.
I understand that.
Now, I don't know, Yara and Arya sound pretty similar to me.
Arya.
But I guess they weren't too concerned with that.
One thing I thought was interesting, so in the funeral for Balon Greyjoy, we had a dirge playing, and throughout a lot of the scenes, there was no sound. I mean, no music being played. One in particular interest, I'm going to jump over to Essos, is Tyrion going and chatting with the dragons. And I heard that. I loved it. This is one of my favorite scenes, and I thought that they did a great job with that. And Tyrion, drunk as a skunk, going down and talking to these dragons, and it's just total silence. And at first, I was wondering, well, I mean, could they play with the suspense a bit here and kind of turn that up? But just the total nothingness, except for the slithering of leather and the clinking of chains and the stumbling of a shit-faced dwarf.
I absolutely love the scene. One of the things I love about the Game of Thrones dragon design is how honestly kind of terrifying and vicious they are. We see dragons in all kinds of media, but there's something about these, and maybe it's how toothy they are, or how sinister they were designed.
Yeah,
they always make I'm always a little unnerved watching them. They're so tense. Those scenes are so tense with them. You're really not sure what they're gonna do. And it's not that I feared for Tyrion's life in that moment, because I think he's got some thick plot armor.
Yep.
But man, talk about me making me feel nervous for a plot armored character that something could actually happen to him. And that moment did it to me. I didn't know how it was going to play out. And that surprise alone, I think, makes it not only a strong scene for this episode, but in a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really agree. And I think it does a lot for Tyrion's character because it really reinforces the baseline level of intelligence he has. I mean, despite his demeanor and despite his like buffoonery, I mean, we saw it when he ran the city in King's Landing. But he's very smart. He's very well read, and he put his knowledge to use. He knows dragons are intelligent, and he trusted his learning, and he went for it.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was great, and I love his line leading up to that moment where he goes, that's. To paraphrase, that's what I do. I drink and I know things.
Exactly.
And that is just like a perfect summation of his character. So, getting to the big moment, I want to talk briefly about the few, 2 or 3 resurrections in the show that we've seen so far. In season 1, we saw, I don't remember if he was dead, but he was on death's door, and that's Khal Drogo, and how we saw him through some kind of blood magic be brought back to life, but he came back as a shell, a literal husk.
Yes.
But alive nonetheless, right? The witch's loophole for Dany. And then I believe it was in season 3, I forget the guy's name, he was one of the Brotherhood.
Beric Dondarrion, and then there was Thoros of Myr.
There we go. There's a guy who's been brought back multiple times.
Over and over. And specifically by a member of the religion of the Light of Lord of Light, which is Melisandre's religion. And so then, is there one? And there's one other that was specifically in this episode as well, with the crazy shit going on with the mountain. The Franken Mountain. Or I guess he's referred to as Robert Strong now?
Is he really?
That's someone texted me that. I don't know if it's true. I'm just putting it out there. Robert Strong. I preferred Franken Mountain. That's what I was going to stick with.
Franken Mountain. I like that. I mean,
that blood smear, just the.
Speaking of Franken Mountain, or Mountainstein, whatever. Slamming that guy against the wall. What an amazing reintroduction to that character. Like, in case you forgot, the Mountain can fuck your shit up.
Nope.
That's what he does. And this guy, Robert Strong, he's not going to play around. And I love like the cowering Kingsguard.
Yeah.
He's just standing. All he has to do is stand there.
He went for his sword.
Okay. That sigh of relief as he leaves with Cersei. He kind of stares him down for an instant and then follows her.
You know what we didn't get closure on? Jaime.
Oh.
Last we saw Jaime, right? He was being surrounded at the High Sept.
Man, talk about scene, a power play between those two.
Yeah, I mean, you take out Jaime, you already have Cersei kind of cowering behind, and Tommen's unable to do anything for fear of his wife. They're taking complete control. I mean, he had the right of it. They are nothing. They are lowly men, and they have the power to undo an empire.
One of the great themes of the show is how, the idea of the Game of Thrones and the different players who are moving pieces. It's not just kings and armies, but there are gods and bankers and witches and priests, and everyone is fine. Season 1 has these great moments between Varys the Spider and Peter Baelish, Littlefinger, where they have this discussion where you almost feel like that this series is really about these two guys moving their pieces. And I think you can examine all kinds of characters in that fashion as well. But, since they're up front, since they are in season 1, and considering how many main characters die in that season, it almost feels like maybe it is their show. Yeah. Maybe this is their story. Especially how big of a part Varys plays in the novels. I don't want to get into spoilers. I don't know if you finished book 5.
Whoa.
We'll bypass that one, but kind of like the plan behind the plan.
As you'd say, I got egg on my head or face.
Hey. This is a terrible segue, but
Brucey B got that sharp silver D.
Kind of reminiscent of how he betrayed Robb in a way. Like, he kind of had those vibes. Not quite at a wedding, but in a moment of what's supposed to be kind of like joy.
Yeah.
And you think of like what's going to happen with this union, with the Red Wedding. It was like that, you unite the families, and Rob's army's going to get, going to be strong enough. And little do you know that tables are being flipped, rugs are being pulled.
I mean, yeah. And then Ramsay just kind of takes the situation, and he just, oof. I mean, I guess you could just say it was rough. Huh. But I guess jumping back on that point, let's talk about Ghost. I was a little worried that something was going to happen to him leading up to the big finale of the episode.
I thought Ghost was a sacrifice.
Yeah, I thought that's how it was going to go down. But I'm glad to say that it did not.
No, and I loved just the little detail of how he noticed right before the resurrection of Jon Snow Stark Targaryen occurred.
Johnny.
So now I thought, I was a firm believer in I believe in R+L equals J, right? I believe that Jon Stark is really the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and the rightful heir.
Yes, and I believe that. I guess there's nothing to really show this, but I'm going to say that like he's a trueborn son, not a bastard. Like there's going to be somehow they had a maester there, and like it's a real wedding and shit. Because like, do we know when like the tower scene is in relation to the sacking of King's Landing? Because sackings of the King's Landing came after the Trident, and the Trident was where Rhaegar died. But no, that doesn't matter because it was 9 months after. I think it was after the sacking because it was down in the south somewhere, right? And that's where Ned had some of his men, and there was so like it doesn't even. Rhaegar may have never even left the city, but like say Lyanna, his new bride and pregnant with child, gets sent with 2 of the King's Guard out to somewhere in the Reach.
Did you see the preview for next week?
I guess not. I thought I did. What happens?
Oh no, I'm just asking.
HBO Now. Can I log in fast enough?
There were set pics of what seemed to be the Tower of Joy, and there were clips and trailers leading up to the season premiere. And
wait, what's the Tower of Joy being?
Is that where Lyanna gave birth, or is that just where Ned finds her, where Rhaegar took her?
I think no. Well, okay, so that's what it's called. That's what we're talking about. I mean, that's where I think she dies in childbirth. Like, I don't think anyone in that fight stabs her.
Probably
right?
not.
Like, I mean, Ned and like the guy from Howland Reed or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no way that any of them attacked her. No way. The Kingsguard were there to protect her. There's no way they did anything. So I'm confident she died in giving birth to Jon.
In the previews for next week's episode, toward the end, there seems to be a moment with a young Ned Stark, not as young as the one we saw in this episode, quite a bit older, with Bran present. And I have to think, and there are soldiers, they're probably Targaryen soldiers or Kingsguard. And I have to think that in next week's episode, we are going to see, now that Jon is back, we are going to see the Tower of Joy finally and put to rest once and for all who Jon really is, which has been teased since the very beginning, since the second episode, I believe, is when Ned tells Jon is leaving with his uncle Benjen to the Wall.
The next time I see you, we'll talk about your mother.
I promise. So unless they had a conversation in death, briefly, they're not going to have that conversation. So we're going to have to find out in another way. And I think now that we've established these new rules for Bran is this kind of like the king of flashback, which I think is great. Believe me, I love flashbacks, and I think this style is handled very well, at least based on this episode, tonight's episode. Now, I will say with Jon's resurrection, I was kind of hoping what we were going to see was a moment that mirrored Dany's Mother of Dragons moment from the end of season 1.
Yeah.
I thought they were going to throw his corpse on the fire, and then Jon Targaryen was going to walk out of the flames.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was alive chatting you while I was watching the episode. I mean,
yeah,
that was exactly what I thought was going to happen. I mean, they were all for it. They really kind of hinted at it. So, I mean, they obviously had considered it at one point in the writer's room. So interesting to see they kind of went the other way with it, kind of very minimal. But I mean, thinking back to Dondarrion, that's basically what happened with him, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, rather than that witch's black magic, I mean, this is just how the red magic works. We don't get the big song and dance of the fire and the rebirth of the dragon.
Well, in a way, like in a spiritual sense, if the Lord of Light did, have a part to play in John's resurrection, then you could kind of look at it as like a resurrection through fire.
Absolutely.
Just, on a spiritual level, not quite a literal in a literal way like Danny's ascension into motherhood of dragonism or whatever we want to call it. And I got to say that even though I wanted to see that moment, I wasn't really disappointed. The showrunners and the director, they really kind of drug out that moment with John just perfectly. And you almost expect it to cut to black before he opens his eyes, because that's what happened at the end of season 5. Mm-hmm. This refusal to accept that John is dead, because he's one of the few heroes in this show, like good people. I know a lot of people had a tough time when Robb was killed, because Robb, even though he's not as big of a player in the novels, like in terms of like a featured character, in the show, he was kind of promoted to main character status in a lot of ways. He was very much like the hero you root for.
Yeah.
And then he's gone. And then so like John to kind of take his place in a way, I'm happy to see him back. I'm glad they didn't cut to black this time. I'm glad that we could see, even if it's just a moment, the life rush back into him. I can't wait to see the look on all those traitors' faces.
Absolutely, especially that little piece of crap, whatever, Jimmy or whatever.
Ollie?
His name is. I don't care. Ollie's dead to me. Ollie had a chance. Ollie could have been the next Jon Snow, but Ollie's just a little garbage human being, and he's probably gonna get eaten by Ghost.
Ollie, you had it coming.
He did.
Had it coming, buddy. He killed Ygritte too. Lest we forget.
I mean. She was about to kill John, right?
Maybe.
He done good.
Maybe.
He made the choice that neither of them could make.
There we go.
Saving his brother, and then he threw it all away like the piece of garbage that he is.
So, overall, this was, in my opinion, this was far better. Tonight's episode was far better than last week's opener. Maybe one of the strongest episodes in a while, maybe since season 4.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And I like season 5. I know a lot of people don't. They have the problems a lot of time spent in Dorne is one of them. But yeah, for me, I struggle to think of a more recent episode that was as impactful as tonight's. And when all of these payoffs start popping off, Balon's gone. Now we have questions about the Iron Isles, the fate of this King's Moot, and now it's with Sansa, with Brienne. What happens to Theon? This question there. What happens at the Wall now that Jon's back? And there are just like 100 questions revolving around Jon.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, and it's nice as an audience member to know that Sansa's plan isn't for naught as she heads towards Castle Black.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, we also don't know what state Jon's going to be in. I mean, what if he left a piece of him behind?
I think he did, and that is a big question to me. Like, this Jon Snow, it's like, what's missing?
Dude, man, he is going to execute the shit out of what's his name.
I cannot wait for the Battle of the Bastards, when either I guess we've already heard it's going to be Jon in terms of like Mel's vision in the fire. It's going to be Jon at Winterfell and not Ramsay coming to the Wall. Maybe that can change, but that could be quite the moment. Is that an episode 9 battle?
Yeah,
Battle of
potentially.
Winterfell?
And the whole of the North unites behind the Lord Commander, and just the wildlings and the remaining the remaining black crows.
I'm getting chills.
They just
the king in the north.
The king in the north.
Oh,
the king in the north.
Lord Jon Targaryen.
Jon Targaryen.
I was reading something online, some speculation about another part of next week's preview. Someone approaches Ramsay and says, I have a gift for you. And Ramsay just like, his devilish grin, tears across his face. And there was some speculation that gift could be not Theon, like you might think, the obvious conclusion to jump to. But what if it's Rickon?
Wow.
And Ramsay suddenly has a Stark back in Winterfell, and now you have Rickon in the mix during like this, I guess, Battle of Winterfell that could be coming up with Brienne and Sansa and Jon, and maybe Bran will come flying in on a three-eyed raven.
Yeah, wow, yeah, that's
because we haven't seen him in forever.
Yeah, we don't know what Asha is up to.
Yep. Also, sad. Hodor used to talk.
Yeah.
I want to know more about that.
Ned's great shame. Well, that's it for us today. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed the show. Once again, follow us on Twitter at Joleedo, and follow us on Tumblr at joleedo.tumblr.com, and like us on Facebook. Remember to subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever you're listening. We live and die by your support. I'm Alex Lee, and on behalf of Jason Johnson and the entire Joleedo Podcast Network, thanks again for tuning in. And remember, winter is coming.